Hey, Luca here. Exactly 1 year ago, I got married. And right after that, I went to honeymoon for 3 weeks. This means that for 3 weeks, I shut about 95% of work off. And I consider this a major accomplishment because in the previous 2 years, I had never been able to stay away from refactoring for more than, I don't know, maybe 4 to 5 days. But it didn't come easy. It required a lot of preparation, and that, combined with everything else going on in our lives, made those last few months before the wedding extreme. In fact, other than day to day work, we had to organize the wedding, which in Italy is kind of a big deal. We relocated, and I anticipated all the stuff for the honeymoon, which is I wrote about 6 to 7 newsletter editions all in advance. All of this meant fitting about twice the regular amount of work into an already packed schedule. Now, everything turned out fine, and in retrospect, this period taught me a lot about myself, about productivity, and also knowledge work in general. Now, going from Italy to Polynesia for honeymoon is about 30 hours travel time, including a non-stop 12 hours flight to Los Angeles. During that flight, I drafted this article. So today I want to tell you about my own framework to organize knowledge work and maximize my personal output. It draws from the experience of the past few months combined with that of 2 years of solo writing work and 10 plus years of engineering and management one. So let's dive in. And let's start with a famous story which you may have probably heard about a professor who teaches a life lesson to his students by means of a simple metaphor. This metaphor is about a jar that first gets filled with rocks, then pebbles are added, and finally sand. If you want to make room for everything, the order in which you put stuff in the jar matters. Rocks leave room for pebbles, which in turn leave room for sand. And the opposite is not true. If you put pebbles first, then you can't fit the rocks, and so on. Now, in the original story, the metaphor is about important things in your life. But today I borrow this to talk about work. Because, like the items in the story, not all work is created equal. If the jar is your time, or better, your energy, the strategy, quote unquote, you use to fill it matters. So let's organize your work into three buckets, starting with rock work, like in the story. Rocks are your most important work. It is the one that requires the most of your energy and your creativity. It produces an original output and gives you a sense of fulfillment. So, rock work, you can say, is why you do your job. Examples of rock work for various tech roles might be system design, creating good design docs, coding complex stuff, running good one-on-ones, or in my case, writing newsletter editions. It is the work that makes you unique and the hardest to delegate. Now, pebbles instead are not necessarily smaller tasks than rocks, but they require less of your energy per unit of time. So while you need to perform rocks at your very best, for pebbles you just need to clear some bar or to keep a standard. For me, a litmus test to identify pebbles, which may not be the same for others, is whether I can do them with music on. Now, for example, as a writer, I can't really write essays while listening to music, but I can reply emails, I can do some research for new articles, and when I was a manager, I could go through status updates, check in on things, and unblock small decisions. As an engineer, I could code small changes or squash some bugs or add missing tasks. After all of this, we are left with sand work, which is basically chores. You do them because you have to, but there isn't a lot of intelligence involved. Examples of my personal chores right now are like moving notes between various tools, or publish interviews on YouTube, or update spreadsheets, or sending some email sequences. And you can think of infamous engineers' chores too, like going through CI/CD, updating dependencies, or attending meetings where you never speak. Let's not pretend they do not exist. Now that you have classified work, let's think about your work basket. Because in my experience, you should aim to spend around 50% of your day on rocks, which is high intensity work. In fact, there is a balance to be found. You can't do intense work all day long because it's too draining and you can't keep up in the long run. But at the same time, spending most of your day on small things points to lack of meaning, lack of impact, and ultimately lack of personal growth. So, how do you optimize your basket? Here are a few strategies based on the type of tasks. The first advice is break rocks. For hard, intense work, break it into smaller tasks and turn some rock parts into pebbles and sand. So, for example, to simplify writing, create templates. To simplify processes, create checklists. To simplify coding, improve platform. The second advice is to delegate pebbles. Simpler tasks are easier to delegate, and they also make for opportunities for younger coworkers, for example, to prove themselves. And finally, automate send. Chores should be simply automated. For example, it is easy these days to create workflows and integrate various tools by using AI and low-code tools. Now, this strategy is not one off, it's continuous. You take work that is hard, try to make it easier, and keep shifting your attention to stay focused on hard work. To me, this looks like turning art into engineering. What does it mean? For me, art means no clear rules. You apply your judgment in an instinctive way based on your experience, while engineering means creating and following well defined rules to achieve an output. Now, all tasks you do in this way are part art, part engineering. Doing great work to me looks like first doing great art, and second, continuously turning this art into engineering by creating rules. So, once you're happy with your tasks, how do you fill your jar in a way that fits the most things? Let's talk about the things that have the most impact to me about this, which are interruptions and time management. About interruptions, this essay was very challenging to write because it sums up a lot of thoughts that I collected over the years. So it is no coincidence that I drafted this on a plane from Munich to Los Angeles. 12 hours, no internet, zero interruptions. It was probably the most productive time of my life. Now, interruptions are damaging for all work, but especially creative work. I have found that there are three main interruption environments, even that you may find yourself in. The first environment, which is the worst, is you will be interrupted. Like you already know there is a meeting later, or you need to check email frequently. The second environment, which is slightly better, is you may be interrupted, but you may, which means if someone writes to you, you may need to reply, so you need to check. And the third one is when you can't be interrupted, which is exactly like when you're a plane or when you shut all notifications and so on. I have found the difference of productivity between these modes to be immense. The mere idea that you may be interrupted by something makes you decidedly less productive than working in an environment that is guaranteed to be interruption free. And the good news is there are easy things we can do to improve. The first thing is turn will into may. So turn the fact that you will be interrupted into you may be interrupted. So move meetings where they do not interrupt work, like at the end of the day or right before or after lunch. Check email only twice a day, for example, at well defined times. And the second step is turn may into can't, like shut notifications, block distracting websites, especially when doing focus work. So, after you have taken care of your interruptions, let's move to managing your time. It is no secret that I love to time box my tasks. I wrote about this multiple times and I'm attaching more articles to this video. So here is what I do. First, I time box. I create various slots of work during the day and I put individual tasks on the calendar in those slots. And then I religiously adhere to the schedule. Second, Pomodoros. I work in sessions of 25 minutes followed by 5 minutes of rest. I call these Pomodoros because of the Pomodoro technique, and during a session, all notifications are off and I do not allow interruptions. Now, Pomodoros have also become a unit of work to me. I estimate tasks in number of Pomodoros And I know quite precisely how much I can get done over a day and a week. On a good day without calls, I can get around 12 Pomodoros under my belt, and in a week, I can reliably do 50. Now, I organize work and Pomodoros in a schedule that stays pretty much the same every day. Yes, call me crazy, but this is how I work. In the morning, I work from roughly 8:30 to 12:30, and I start with one Pomodoro for planning and triage. I look at tasks and email and put stuff in the calendar. Next, my primary task. I spend 4 Pomodoros, so 2 hours, on the main thing I have to do that day, which is usually advancing the weekly save for me. Then I take a longer rest of about 30 minutes in the middle of the morning. And next, I do a secondary task. I spend the rest of the morning doing less intensive work, like replying to people on the community, social media, and emails for another hours. Next, I have lunch at around 12:30, and I don't get usually back to work until 2 p.m. ish. Over lunch, I usually watch videos from YouTube channels I'm subscribed to. Shout out to some of my favorites like Hikaru for chess, Real Life Lore for geopolitics, and I may watch a lot of things about sim racing, which I'm obsessed about, and more. Next, you have the afternoon where I work from about 2 p.m. to 6 p.m. And I spend the first 2 hours on another big task, which is usually not writing, but it is a rock task. It might be something to improve the library or the community or else. In general, it is often about building stuff because I have found that it balances well with the other main task being writing. Next, like in the morning, I take a break around mid of the afternoon. And finally, in the later part of the afternoon, take on some secondary miscellaneous stuff like replying more emails, check communications, community, and more. So, of course, this schedule doesn't run exactly the same every day. I have calls sometimes and I try to schedule them like later in the day. And the same goes for when I go to gym or for personal and family duties. My goal for the day basically is always to get the two primary tasks done. Now, at this point, many people will say, okay, this may apply well to you, you are a creator, or to engineers, but what about managers? They spend most of their time inside meetings. Well, if you ask me, they shouldn't. I believe that today, in 2024, managers should use plenty of maker time to improve processes and reduce meetings. Managers can still see themselves as makers, just not makers of apps, but makers of work systems. So, for today, the main takeaways from this piece for me are first, not all work is created equal. When you are too tired to do creative work, you may still have some bandwidth for minor stuff. By accounting for that, you can get a lot more done during the day. Next, follow your energy. Create a schedule that matches what you want to achieve and the level of energy you usually have during the day. At any given time, do the type of work that fits your energy. Next, pursue creative work. Make sure a big chunk of your day goes into doing intense creative work. That's what I found to be best for your motivation, your growth, and your overall sense of fulfillment. Next, split tasks. Break daunting work into multiple tasks so you can delegate or automate some of them. And finally, remove interruptions. To get more done, put yourself in a situation where you can't be interrupted. Work in small batches and take pauses like 5 minutes every 30 so you don't get tunnel vision and you catch up with anything that needs your attention. So that's it for today. And as always, thank you for watching. Thank you so much for listening. If you found this chat valuable, you can subscribe to the show on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your favorite podcast app. Also, please consider giving us a rating or leaving a review, as that really helps other listeners find the show. You can find all past episodes and learn more about the show at refactoring.fm. See you in the next episode.